Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the best magic build for Sebille in Divinity Original Sin 2. This is going to be a combination of pyro skills, a bit of necromancy, and some scoundrel just so it feels lore appropriate. This is very synergetic in a team composition, and this is going to be mostly in Act 2, but you can follow along in Acts 1 or 3 as well. Now, the thing is, we can focus on enemies depending on if they have physical or magical shields. I have the full team spec'd around magic here, but if there's a target that does not have physical shield, we can just go right ahead to using our crowd control on them. Now, on targets like this that don't have a magic shield, we also have some abilities that will let us try to crowd control them as well by putting them to sleep just like that. And for a single action point investment, that is quite solid. Now, the other great thing about adding in necromancy onto an elf is that we can get some really cheap spells, and on top of that, we can also use our flesh sacrifice here, which will just give us an action point back. So we immediately get a free sleep off on an enemy, and also set up a blood surface that we can use some of our more impactful necromancy spells at a cheaper cost. Now, we're mostly using necromancy spells for the utility that they bring because it does scale off physical damage, so we're not using a lot of warfare, mostly just to set up our other abilities here, but we're able to resist all damage and survive for 2 turns, which lets us damage ourselves with 500 damage and use Shackles of Pain on an enemy and make them take the damage. And we can actually proc all 3 of these abilities using our flesh sacrifice on a single turn. And while we're not the best melee attacker, we can add a bunch of extra fire damage off into our attacks. And then we have moves like Backlash here, which lets us get a free critical hit off, Sawtooth Knife, which can bypass any armor, and then we have other moves like the Gag Order here, which can silence any spellcasters. And having a bit of warfare lets us take Phoenix Dive, which then lets us cast our fire spells for cheaper, so we have a lot of really nice synergy. So we can go ahead with positioning ourselves in a bit of a different area here. And then when we're standing on our fire here, we can then cast Fireball for a single action point cost, which is actually pretty nuts, because yeah, you can actually hit a lot of targets at a time with this. Sometimes you can get 3. And we're only going to get 2 here, but hey, it's nice for a single, just 1, it blocked it here, but it's good for a single action point cost. This also means we can use Laser Ray and Supernova at a much cheaper cost too, which is really great because they're pretty good damage options. I forgot about the prisoners. So this build is mostly around pyrokinetic, but for our attributes, intelligence is a big one here. I like finesse, but it doesn't have a place here because it's going to be our physical damage, and this is going to power up our spells. We have a lot of really powerful ones that we want to be using. Put this up as high as possible, as the more damage we can get, the better. You can take points to the Constitution. This is not really that amazing of a spell because we want to just go full damage. Memory is important. That's the other skill that we're going to get. And then later on in the game, we're going to put points into our wits for the critical hit chance. But we need to prepare a lot of spells with this because we are kind of a jack of all trades and we shut down enemies dependent on what our team needs. I don't typically like to run a full, just magic team. I like to have at least 1 physical attacker because of all the great crowd control that we can sometimes get off. But still, we're going to go with the highest intelligence and then points in our memory here and then wits after the fact. For our abilities, we do need a bit of warfare. I have 3 points into it here just because I want to get any extra points you can put into your warfare, but this gives us at least at level 3 all the skills we need. So that's really the minimum that we'd want, but pyrokinetic is going to be a big source of all of our damage. I have all 10 points that I can put into here. Get as much as you can on your gear. I only have a +2 for my gear. Obviously, it'd be much better if I had higher because the damage goes way through the roof here. So yeah, as many as you can to pyrokinetic. And then I have a few points in the necromancer. You realistically only need like 3 to 4 points in the earlier acts of the game. I have 1 and then I have 4 points for my gear. So yeah, necromancer is a really good one. I find necromancer gear drops a lot more than any other type of gear. I'm not sure why, but it's going to be easier to gear up from my experience. There's some merit in putting points in polymorph, but I don't think for this particular build, because I'm putting all the rest of the points into warfare. You can do 2 huntsmen to give yourself the tactical retreat, which is a very powerful ability to get some different ground, but I prefer using the Phoenix Dive to get our fire set up and allow us to do some more things with our other setups here. So pyrokinetic, max that out. Next, points into our necromancer to get the utility skills that we'll be using. And then the rest in warfare, because there's actually some pretty useful skills there. And it's going to scale up our necromancy's damage alongside our intelligence, but we're not focused on physical. I also want to mention you'd like to have at least 2 points of Aerotheurge as well. This gives us some more teleportation, like Nether Swap and teleportation. So those are quite nice as well. Some people like to have Geomancer because there is some powerful abilities here from the earth that synergize with the pyrokinetic, but I'll be doing that in a future video. I also posted a build of a Hydrosophis Aerotheurge Losa build, so you can check that out if you're curious. And if you're doing this Sebille, Lord Master is the best for her because she already gets a +1 naturally. Now, our talents, there's a couple of ways that we can go about building this. So elemental affinity is kind of an essential, so this will lower the action point cost of spells by 1 when we stand in a surface. So our blood surfaces, it's insane. Fire, we can set up our fire spells. We got a lot of options here to make everything cost a lot less, and we can alternate these depending on what our team needs on each turn. That's why I think this is really synergetic. And not a lot of people even talk. I was looking for anyone that may have used a build like this. I haven't seen a whole lot, but these work together very well because blood and fire are easy to set up. Hothead also, whenever we have max vitality, which we can get with our necromancy spells, 10% crit chance. When then with Savage Sortilege, we're adding that 10% crit chance to our magical skills. Very good. We really, really, really want this, and especially with if we're using daggers here for the skills. You don't get the critical hit chance off around here, but we want to get, if you can put a sword in your offhand for the crit chance, that's best. Now, Mnemonic's pretty good for the memory points that we can get because 3 memory points is actually pretty good value here. It's essentially like getting 1 ability score upgrade, but we don't need it. What's interesting is that we have some other fun options. I like the Executioner here, 2 extra action points after dealing a killing blow. Everyone can benefit from this, but another one that's good is we do need to have a bit of an investment. We have to have 1 point actually invested in our Scoundrel here. Taking a Scoundrel up a little bit higher, not really necessary, but the thing is, with Pawn, you can move around a lot better. So that 1 action point worth of movement is important when you do a fire. When you drop down in the fire, you can then walk onto the fire and get the free fire, or 1 action point less casting. For that, I think it's valuable because then you're not spending action point on that. Despite us being a high damage dealer, we're more utility damage focused, so other characters on our team can use the Executioner. I typically like to have 2 Pawns, 2 Executioners per team because they're the best talents, and I think it works best on here because this just gives us these surfaces, and then we can also sometimes walk to a blood surface or anything that we may need. And lastly is the Torturer. This, again, we're a utility. We have a lot of things that we can now apply to enemies when we're using this. It might even be worth taking Geo for Worm Tremor because that's a good crowd control, but we can apply Burning, Poison, Bleed, Necrofire, Suffocating, and everything through any armors, and then also Ruptured Tendons, which we do have as it's a really good ability. Now for our skills, we have some that are extremely powerful, and Flesh Sacrifice actually sets up ourselves really good. It lowers our constitution, we get a damage boost, which is nice, and the 10%, or the action point is actually really impactful because not only is that an action point, we actually get our necromancy spells cheaper after that. So this is really good. And you can actually use a few different necromancy spells here. But the ones that I like to roll with for necromancy, Shackles of Pain already has a 1 point cost. But the reason this is so good is if a target does not have physical armor, we can then go ahead with our Living on the Edge, make it so that we don't go down. We'll always survive with 1 health point, and then use Last Rites, which does 500 damage to herself, and then it revives someone on our team with full health. So they come back up, we are still living, and a target is taking a full amount of damage. It's actually an insane combination. These normally have a 3 cost. It's reduced by 2 if you use your Skin's Flesh Sacrifice there. So yeah, we can go pretty crazy with these combined together to revive someone and also damage an enemy really heavily. That's a very effective turn. Not always is going to be going to happen, but we also then have other moves like Backlash here, which lets us reposition single action point costs, and with a dagger that can cause bleed, we can sometimes get some extra cheap spells. It's kind of a crazy combination. Also, we have Sawtooth Knife, which will cause bleeding if the target has no physical armor, so we can use this to be able to get that. They also get bleeding for 4 turns, so they're going to be running around leaving surfaces for us to benefit from. I also like to have Gag Order here, which will silence a target. If you have a spellcaster that's got their magic armor stripped down, this is a really good one just to stop them, as it lasts for a single turn, but it's still really good. And then we also got things like Chloroform, as you saw at the start of this video, which if a target has no magic armor, put them to sleep. Just take them out of the fight. They will get attacked by their team, sometimes just be woken up, but for a single action point cost that could sometimes take an enemy out for longer, this is a good choice. Now for our hero skills, I like to add their swap here. This lets you switch places with a target, and you can kind of do some funny stuff like that with maybe diving in somewhere, grabbing someone back out, and then using your Phoenix Dive to be able to reposition and end up in a completely different area. So there's a lot of synergy and ways that you can use Nether Swap. I also like just regular old Teleportation. That's another really good skill you can go with a 2 action point cost. It's a little bit more hefty than Nether Swap, but it's still great. I also like to have Uncanny Evasion. It just feels natural for Sebille to have this, which gives their dodge rate to 90% and movement speed's increased, so you're just basically unhittable for that turn, which is really good. Now for the reason we got Warfare here is I don't have anyone else on my team with these skills, so if there's a target with no physical armor, we can just go and bully them with Battering Ram, which is also a way for us to reposition ourselves. It does have a 2 action point cost and very low damage, but you can backstab with it, and it's mobility at the very least, but mostly for targets that have no physical armor. I also like to use the Phoenix Dive as mentioned because this sets up a fire surface for us to get cheap fire spells right after that, so this can be really effective. And Battle Stomp as well, always a good choice. This can backstab as well, but it's again, these 2 options are for any targets that don't have physical armor. Taking them out of the fight for 1 turn by knocking them down is really good. Now, into our pyro skills, there's so many awesome ones here. Now, I like Firebrand. This will add fire damage to all weapon skills and attacks for all allies. So if you have other teammates that are using physical attacks, no, this isn't super amazing because it's splitting your damage types, but it's an option. And especially if there's a target that does not have magical armor, you can do some physical against them. I guess it's just an extra option. You don't have to use these two here if you don't want to use them. And you can take the memory points and put them into your intelligence. But Sparking Swings will also do this. It attacks another enemy, basically like a chain lightning kind of fire attack. It's useful. Now, Ignition's really a good one here. So this will set all characters around us on fire, deals fire damage, and ignites all surfaces. So this is like our setup if we're not using our Phoenix Dive. And that is a 4-turn cooldown. This is a 2-turn cooldown. So this one we can pop a little bit easier. Searing Daggers is great because then once it gets that 1-point cost, it's really good. So this will set burning on the target for 3 turns, and you can inflict burning quite a bit to use on some other skills we'll get to in a second for massive damage. Fireball, as mentioned, a single action point fireball with 3 turns of burning, really nice. Laser Ray, same deal, two action points if we're on fire, and it sets burning for 3 turns and does fire clouds and a lot of fire damage. We also got Supernova here, which you saw at the start does a big area effect attack, and it does a lot of fire damage, except areas blocked by obstacles, so just be mindful of that. It's actually kind of tricky to get this to land sometimes, but anyone that's close to you will get hurt. And then Spontaneous Combustion is a really big skill, so this will deal fire damage to a target, and if the target's inflicted with burning or necro fire, we remove those, but we do a lot extra damage. So basically, this is like our finisher here. You're going to use this, and it's going to be a powerful attack. Now, Peace of Mind's also another nice one to increase your stats. This can actually let you use gear. If you have a gear that says it needs 12 strength and it gives you +2 to strength, you can pop Peace of Mind to equip it and then unequip, or use the gear and it'll always stay equipped because you have that bonus to your strength. It's a fun little fact there. But yeah, that's what we're going to be rolling with for fire skills. Haste is another good skill. So you can go, if you don't want to use the fire on our weapons here, we can take that off and take off Firebrand and go with Haste, which is obviously a very powerful spell. And Fire Whip's kind of nice because blind targets. And it has a 3 cost, so we can actually reduce that down to 2. And it's not a terrible spell, and it'll apply burning on the target. Now our gear, I have a lot of necromancy points as mentioned, but we want to find pyrokinetic. I don't really have the greatest gear for that. It's +2 Scoundrel, +1 pyrokinetic. But yeah, necromancy and pyrokinetic are kind of the priorities there. And then I would also recommend getting any type of warfare and Scoundrel just for the extra bonuses that may bring. Another thing is you can use the living armor talent and give yourself some extra sustain on this build. It'll replenish our magic armor. It's not like essential, but it can be kind of fun. Now for our weapons, we do need a dagger to use any of these dagger skills, so that's just something to keep in mind. Priority would be anything with crit rate. I don't have that, but I have this one here that's applying bleed, which is honestly really good. And when we get into combat, Ignition, it's a good one to start off with. If you got surfaces that we can set on fire, this can be a good way to do that. Otherwise, we can reposition with Phoenix Dive and then use our pawn to be able to get that extra fire damage off on it. So you can see there that 0 action point cost, then walk into that. And then we got our other spells here at a lower rate. So then we can drop things like Fireball, and it's going to cost us less. Just be mindful of friendly fire when using spells like this because it's a little bit easy to hit, and especially in a small room. We got a critical hit off there, and that's one of the nice things about having a decent crit rate. From Hothead to +10%, if I had weapons that gave us an increased crit rate, we'd be over 30%. You can easily get like a 39% in Act 2, so pretty crazy. Now, this target here has no magical armor, so I should have went ahead, I guess at the start of the video, I went with the sleep attack there, but anything that's resisted by magic armor, we can just go right ahead with attacking with that. So Flame Whip here, which can blind a target, really nice because then we can use it against this target here, and we blinded them because they didn't have magical armor. And they just used Magic Shell to give him magic armor. I also want to mention, if you have a summoner, the Flaming Slug can actually be pretty nice because it actually has the Slug Rush and Laser Ray here, which will do a bit of fire damage, and also it's synergetic with this team up. And the Flame Slug is also pretty resistant to fire, so we can get in and use things like our Supernova here and just explode to deal quite a bit of damage, and it'll actually end up healing the Fire Slug itself. So yeah, a lot of synergy there. Laser Ray being another really nice spell that we can use because that's going to do a pretty good chunk of damage there in a large area, apply that burning status. We want to get that off on the enemy as much as possible because then we can use that spontaneous combustion and just basically explode them in their place. So that's a really good ability there. Got a bunch of extra damage off and still burning that target, chipping away their health. And luckily we were able to burn this target down. And here's a situation where I don't have any fire because there was a bunch of water they put it all out with. So then we can go ahead with our necromancy style attacks here. So if there's any spellcaster, we can silence them there with our spells. And these are a lot cheaper. So we can use things like Living on the Edge, which is kind of funny because then it gives us basically immortality. And then on top of that, we also got like a Shackles of Pain there. If there's a target that does not have physical armor up, we can then just basically take them out that way. And Chloroform being great if there's a target that does not have magical armor. And if they're away from their teammates, it can be great because it makes it harder for them to get woken up. That's just an easy way for us to crowd control every turn. We're just waiting for cooldown, so what's nice is we actually have a lot of these attacks here, which are just going to give us crowd control if there's targets with physical armor. No one else on our team has that, so we can be that constant source of it to be able to just keep enemies down on the ground. And again, the combo is to use our Phoenix Dive here to be able to set up. And what's funny, sometimes you can use that to explode stuff, and that was an explosive barrel. It's just beside it, but with the pawn, again, we got that cheap cost to all of our spells, so we can do some pretty nutty stuff here. Just because fire is so disruptive, and you can explode things just like that and end combat pretty quickly. So that is what I think to be one of the best Sebille builds for Magic in Divinity Original Sin 2. If this video is useful, please hit the subscribe button below. Hope you guys all have a great day. Catch you in the next one.